Roman Reigns listens. Why? The Usos push Jacob Fatu. Loyalty test by Roman Reigns? Jacob Fatu changes everything. Silence from Roman Reigns speaks loud. The bloodline on edge. Make sure you subscribe and hit the notification bell so you never miss an update. What happens when loyalty starts sounding a lot like doubt, inside a family that was built on unquestioned obedience? And let me flip that for a second. What does it really mean when a man like Roman Reigns, who usually doesn't ask, suddenly decides to listen? Because that right there, that's where things start to feel different. This moment with the Usos wasn't loud. It wasn't chaotic. No chairs flying, no sudden betrayals, at least not yet. But if you've been watching this story closely, you already know, the quiet moments? Those are the dangerous ones. Those are the ones where everything shifts without you even realizing it. And then you bring Jacob Fatu into the conversation. Yeah, now it's not just complicated, it's volatile. In this video, we're not just recapping what happened. We're slowing it down, piece by piece, like we're rewatching a crime scene. Every glance, every pause, every word that almost got said, it all matters. Because when the Usos step forward and speak on Jacob Fatu, they're not just making a suggestion. They're making a statement. And when Roman Reigns stands there, hearing them out instead of shutting it down immediately, that tells you something is shifting behind the scenes. But here's the real question, and I want you to actually think about this before you jump to an answer. Was Roman Reigns genuinely considering what they said, or was he simply letting them talk long enough to expose exactly where their loyalty stands? Because those are two very different scenarios. And if you've followed Roman long enough, you know he doesn't do anything by accident. This is a man who turns silence into power. Who made people fall in line without even raising his voice half the time. So when he pauses, when he listens, when he doesn't immediately assert control, you have to ask yourself, why now? Now let's talk about the Usos for a second. Because this wasn't just them casually bringing up a name. No, this felt intentional. Carefully chosen words, measured tone, almost like they knew they were walking a very thin line. And honestly, they probably were. Think about it, these are guys who have lived inside Roman's system. They know how he thinks. They know how he reacts. So for them to step forward and essentially vouch for Jacob Fatu? That's not random. That's calculated. But calculated for what? Are they trying to strengthen the bloodline by bringing in someone who matches that intensity? Or, and this is where it gets interesting, are they trying to introduce a new variable into a system that's been too tightly controlled for too long? Because let's be real, adding someone like Jacob Fatu into the mix doesn't just help the bloodline. It changes it. And Roman knows that. You could see it in the way he carried himself during that moment. Not anger. Not even frustration. Just awareness. Like he was already 10 steps ahead, thinking about outcomes nobody else in that ring had even considered yet. And if you didn't catch that the first time watching, go back and look again. Seriously. Pause it. Watch his eyes. That's not a man being surprised, that's a man processing, evaluating, deciding. Now here's where I want you to jump in and drop it in the comments. I'm actually curious what you think. Backhand index pointing right, was Roman Reigns truly open to the idea of Jacob Fatu joining the bloodline? Backhand index pointing right, or was he quietly testing the Usos to see if their loyalty is still where it's supposed to be? Because both answers lead to very different futures. One leads to expansion, power, evolution. The other? That leads to tension, cracks. And we've seen what happens when cracks start forming in this family. It doesn't end quietly. And let's not ignore Jacob Fatu in all of this. Even without being front and center in that moment, his presence was felt. That's the kind of name that doesn't just sit in the background. It lingers. It creates pressure. Because if he does step in, he's not coming in to play a role, he's coming in to make an impact. So now imagine this scenario for a second. Roman accepts him. What happens then? Does the bloodline become even more unstoppable? Or does it become unstable? Because too much power in one place, that rarely stays under control for long. And if Roman rejects him? Now you've got a different kind of problem. Because the Usos just put themselves out there. They spoke up. They showed where they stand. And if Roman shuts that down, what does that do to the trust between them? You see how messy this can get? This is why moments like this matter more than the big fights sometimes. Because the fights? Those are the results. This right here? This is the setup. This is where the story quietly starts turning in a completely different direction. And if you're enjoying breaking this stuff down like this, hit that like button real quick, it actually helps more than you think. And if you're new here, subscribe so you don't miss the next chapter, because something tells me this situation is far from over. Now let's dig a little deeper into the psychology of it all. Roman Reigns has built his entire dominance on control. Not just physical control, but emotional, psychological control. He doesn't just lead the bloodline, he defines it. So when someone else, even family, tries to influence the direction? That's not a small thing. That's a challenge. Not a loud one. Not an obvious one. But a challenge nonetheless. And challenges, well, Roman doesn't usually let those slide. So the fact that he didn't immediately shut it down? That's the part that should have your attention. Because that could mean one of two things. Either he's evolving. Or he's planning something. And honestly, I don't know which one is more dangerous. Now before we wrap this up, I want to throw one more question your way, because this one's been stuck in my head ever since that segment ended. Backhand index pointing right, if Jacob Fatu does enter the bloodline, who do you think he aligns with first, Roman Reigns, or the Usos? Take a second and really think about that. Because your answer probably says a lot.